Welcome everyone to What's New in School Year 25-26, presented by Arts Education in Maryland Schools. My name is Rachel McGrain, and I'm the Executive Director at AEMS, and I'm joined by two of my wonderful colleagues, Peter Dayton and Alyssa Gittens. This session will be recorded. The first half will be shared with all registrants, and the Q&A portion will be used internally for our own note-taking purposes. The slide deck itself is full of links and great information that we'll be sharing at the end of the presentation. We'll spend about 15 minutes walking through the current landscape on the national, state, and local levels impacting Maryland and sharing the results of our school year 24-25 teacher survey. We'll then spend a few minutes sharing additional information and offerings from AEMS for the year ahead, and then we'll open it up to comments and questions from you all. So before we dive in, a little bit about AEMS. We at AEMS envision a public education system in Maryland that supports, cultivates, nurtures, and uplifts all students' creativity through a robust arts education experience so they can thrive in a healthy society. I imagine that everyone here today has some vested interest in the arts, whether you're an arts teacher or parent living and breathing the impact on your students every day, or you may be more removed from the day-to-day but have been witness to the power of the arts. We do this work because we know just how transformative and central the arts are to our humanity and our development as empathetic, joyous, confident, and community-minded people. We do this work so that every child has the opportunity to explore their world in a way that the arts uniquely provide. The values that guide us in this work are community, creativity, growth, and racial equity. Our mission is to ensure that all students in the state of Maryland have access to high-quality arts education. We believe that by advocating, convening, and developing resources, we will be able to connect, equip, and elevate Maryland's arts education ecosystem, which will result in access to a robust arts education for Maryland's public school students. So to break that down a little bit, our overarching strategies, we're actually going to hit all of these today. So we'll be connecting, that's in the second part during our Q&A, equipping with you all with some information and data, and elevating successes and challenges around the state. Our main buckets of activities include advocacy. We'll share some examples of letters, testimony, and presentations. Resources, again, we'll share some of those at the end of the presentation, and you'll hear throughout some examples of the work that we've done through convenings, for example, with arts education leaders, educators, and advocates. So now to dive into the work. One of the things that we do at AEMS is to keep tabs on what's happening nationally and then bring that information to you through a Maryland arts education lens. We have a lot of great collaborators on the national level who've contributed to the information that I'm about to share. One of the biggest impacts that federal policy has on public education is through funding. And for the arts, that primarily comes through the National Endowment for the Arts and the U.S. Department of Education. The National Endowment for the Arts is the largest public funder of arts in the country, and among other Maryland organizations, it supports the Maryland Arts Council, who support arts education organizations and teaching artists. As of right now, the Arts Council itself has secured its fiscal 26 funding from the NEA. However, the NEA's funding, along with related National Endowment for the Humanities, is in jeopardy at the federal level. And you can take action demanding full funding for the NEA with Americans for the Arts using a link we'll share in a few slides. At the U.S. Department of Education, there have been and continue to be issues with funding sources being approved and then rescinded or delayed. For example, promised title funds were withheld from states this past July 1st, and AEMS was one of 600 organizations who opposed this action. The funds were ultimately released, but not without creating strain and confusion in the meantime. In the last few weeks, grantees around the country have received notice that their assistance for arts education grants were canceled. Just this Monday, it was announced that $2 million from this grant is being reallocated to support charter schools. Again, there is an action link coming up you can use to advocate for these grants to be restored. And as we look ahead, one prior slide, please. As we look ahead to fiscal 26 funding, there are a number of programs that support arts education that are in jeopardy. The table you see here has a breakdown of how those programs were funded this past year, alongside the executive and legislative budget proposals that are currently being worked through on Capitol Hill. As you can see, all of these programs, with the exception of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, have at least one proposal to be eliminated entirely or decreased. Your voice matters in all of this, so please tell your legislators to support funding for these critical programs that support arts education in our community. This slide has links to Write to Congress with Americans for the Arts to learn more about how title funds support the arts from the Arts Education Alliance and learn more about current funding cuts and reallocations. This is an article from Ed Week that was published just yesterday. In addition to cuts, there are some new pieces of legislation that have recently been introduced in the House that promote arts education, and those are the Arts Education for All Act and the HBCU Arts Act. And finally, an extremely damaging voucher program passed through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And so Maryland now has the option to enroll or not enroll in this program. We, as a member of the Maryland Alliance for Racial Equity in Education, urge Governor Moore not to enroll in this program because it will siphon away billions of dollars from public to private education. You can learn more and take action with our partners at Marie and Ed Trust. And again, there are links on this slide and the logos linked to their websites. There's a statement from Marie about this specifically and an Ed Trust article with a lot more detail. That's where the quote on this slide is from. AEMS will continue to stay tuned in and share more information through our email action alerts and on our National Advocacy website page. We'll continue standing up for arts education in Maryland through our participation in national coalitions and sign-ons. And if this is an area you are particularly interested in, I recommend that in addition to the organizations we shared information from already, you check out resources from the Arts Education Partnership, the National Guild for Community Arts Education, and this issue brief with talking points from the Cultural Advocacy Group that we're a part of. This is both a lot of information and just a drop in the bucket. So now we'll move on to some state updates. We at AEMS are fortunate to collaborate closely with the Maryland State Department of Education, MSDE, and leaders around the state, including through the Superintendent's Fine Arts Education Advisory Panel, of which I am a co-chair. We also monitor policies and updates through the State Board of Education, Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board, and Accountability and Implementation Board. And we have been able to share our priorities and work with these decision-making bodies through presentations, letters, meetings, and testimony. So here are a few highlights of that state-level work that we've either been a direct part of or have been monitoring and share now with you. The Comprehensive Arts Pathways were approved by the State Board this past March, and they describe sequential courses of study in any of the 5 arts disciplines and additional career-aligned activities that prepare students to be college and/or career-ready in the arts upon high school graduation. The pathways are aligned to Blueprint Pillar 3's college and career readiness goals and the MSDE College and Career Readiness Standard Policy document. This policy alignment is really important to make sure that these pathways are utilized with integrity all the way down to the school level. The pathways include explicit guidance for sequential study of arts disciplines throughout high school, prioritizing scheduling arts courses in the 9th grade to leverage proven arts benefits related to attendance and sense of belonging, to keep student pathway options open, and to ensure blueprint alignment across different trajectories. Once fully implemented, students who complete this pathway will earn an arts diploma acknowledgement upon graduation. We'll share a link to read the policy, and a new website with more information will be launching soon. 2 other big policies of note that have come out of MSDE and the State Board this year are new literacy and math policies. So we urge you all on the ground to keep an eye out for how those policies are being implemented. We know that anytime there are big shifts, there are always unintended consequences. One thing in particular to look out for is scheduling. And so we want to make sure that those policies are being implemented, but not at the expense of arts education. So as it'll be up to us to collectively flag as issues come up so we can work together to be part of the solution. Another big policy underway is a proposed new fine arts licensure pathway. So we're talking about getting more arts teachers into our classrooms. So pathways to the classroom used to include traditional pathway. For example, you enroll in an institute of higher ed and complete a degree. An alternate program, though these do not exist specifically for the arts, or what's called a transcript analysis pathway. You take a set of courses while on a conditional license. In April of 2024, that third pathway was eliminated for all content areas. But because there are no alternate pathways for the arts, this now limits prospective arts educators to traditional pathways, which isn't always viable, especially for artists and career changers. So, upon discovery of this issue, thanks to a higher ed partner at MICA, we organized public comment, which was discussed by the Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board, which then led to the convening of an MSDE-led working group and subsequent recommendations to create a new pathway specifically for arts educators. The new recommendation has now been granted permission to publish by the Professional Standards Board, and it next goes to the State Board of Education, we anticipate at their September meeting. If the new pathway is approved, it will then go to the Maryland Register for a public comment period, and then go back to each board to review for final approval. We're optimistic that this pathway will be available in the coming months, and there are still a few more opportunities for public comment at the upcoming state board meeting and during the public comment period, which we'll share more information about that with the slide deck and as an action alert through our email list tomorrow. Another opportunity to shape state policy is as the teacher member of the state board. That position is now open, and the inaugural position, teacher member of the board, was held by a music teacher, Rachel McCusker. And it has been incredibly valuable to have a true arts advocate on the board. So if you are a teacher or you know a teacher, think about applying for this position and share it widely. Nominations are open through the end of September, and then voting will happen in November. All of these policies and decision-making bodies impact teachers and students in a real way, which is why we are involved in this work, to make sure that policies and practices are in place at the state level to ensure student access to high-quality arts education at the local level. So at the local level, within this context of the national and state points we've touched on, decisions are being made at local government, boards of education, central office, and at the school levels that impact student access to arts education. Some of the changes we've seen just in the last year include wholesale program elimination. For example, the third grade strings program in Howard County, which then had ripple effects of many more teachers getting moved around to new schools and new content areas. We've also seen programs be proposed to be cut and instead maintained in response to community outcry, including in Howard County in prior years. This is an example of decisions happening at the Board of Education level to be aware of and look out for in your own district. Other impacts coming from the local superintendent and Board of Education level include central office downsizing, position cuts, and smaller budgets for things like transportation and professional learning that impact the arts. Now, it's not all bad news. There are opportunities and expanding access across the state. For example, with new programs being coordinated through dual enrollment, new arts CTE programs being launched, and a new centralized instrumental music model being implemented in city schools. So advocates, administrators, and teachers are on the ground every day making positive change happen. And we really applaud and support all of those efforts and are grateful for the ones that we're able to be a part of. We collectively must stay diligent in keeping our eyes peeled and ready to take action when the arts are in jeopardy. And we ask that you let us know if you're in need of support in your community through our Arts Ed Access form. It's also extremely important to celebrate the creativity, the expansion, and the maintenance of strong programs in your community as well. In a similar vein, we have some things to celebrate and some challenges to address that we've heard from arts educators in our annual teacher feedback survey, which we are sharing publicly for the first time right now. So we administered a survey to educators both in the fall and the spring of last year. We heard from over 260 teachers from 17 of our 24 LEAs. And you can see, some of the details on here, and we have additional details in social media posts that went out today, and we have a one-pager with all of this as well. So some things that we heard from teachers is that they are seeing students pursue and achieve excellence in the arts. They are seeing joy. It's fun. It's exciting. Kids are loving being in their arts classes. They are building community. They're strengthening relationships with each other, with their teachers, and as community cohorts as a whole. Teachers are seeing immense growth in their students and in their programs. And they're also just seeing those basic skills that you would expect and hope to come from those arts classes. So we're seeing a lot of really positive things. And yet, 90% of teachers who took our survey said that they were facing challenges to providing high quality and equitable arts education to students at their schools. So some of the big issues that were raised, the top one that came up was teachers are looking for sufficient funding, supplies, and space. That's a big one, and we heard that actually more this year than we have in prior years. Student and class scheduling. That we've heard year and year after, scheduling always is an issue. When schedules work great, it's really, really helpful for arts programming, and schedules can also pose a really big barrier and an issue. Teachers are looking for increased support from district and school administration. Again, we hear that on both sides. When we have some really supportive school administrators, it can be really positive. And we also hear from a lot of teachers where that becomes a challenge. And teachers are looking for more support for students, for special education students. We're really excited to be working with MSDE this year on developing some new professional learning opportunities in that area. And teachers are also looking for smaller class sizes with more robust staffing models. These highlights, as part of National Arts and Education Week, we sent to state leaders as well as local leaders across the state to help elevate the concerns of arts educators and the positives that we're hearing from arts educators. So this is one of many resources that we compile and share. And you can check out our website for some more resources, including a Showtime advocacy booklet filled with templates and suggestions to invite decision makers to student performances and exhibits all year long. In partnership with your principal and art supervisor, we encourage you to bring those decision makers in to be part of the transformation and community building that the arts are inspiring in your community, so that they're invested before it comes time to make those difficult decisions. We also have a number of downloadable one-pagers, including the ABCs of Advocacy, which was inspired by successful efforts in Frederick County to save their elementary school instrumental music program last year. AEMS also hosts the Maryland Arts Education Data Project, which is a set of dashboards where you can see what arts courses are available and how many students are enrolled from the statewide down to the school level view. We hope for this to be a tool not necessarily to answer questions, but to refine or expand questions that will lead you to seek more nuanced information outside the data project. So this can be a beginning rather than an end to your data-informed advocacy journey. Another type of resource we offer is professional learning for educators, largely housed within our Maryland Centers for Creative Classrooms program that is a collaborative effort with MSDE and with support from the Maryland State Arts Council. This past year, we launched a new initiative called 3D PD that responded directly to requests and needs from district arts leads. We were able to reach 15 out of 25 LEAs, over 850 teachers who represent more than 41,000 students. Offerings from this program ranged from discipline techniques like ORF and hip hop to special education strategies in the arts classroom and a cross-district visual journaling workshop. So we're very excited to be offering that again. And as you can see, teachers really got a lot out of these experiences. It helped them build confidence and connection, equip them to bring new knowledge and skills to their classrooms to serve their students. Some of our other courses include the Anti-Racist Educators in the Arts Learning Lab, Arts Education Through a Trauma-Informed Lens, and Supporting LGBTQ+ Students and Families. We're also excited to be re-envisioning some of our more immersive programs and developing some new course offerings throughout the year. So now, as we wrap up the information sharing portion of our agenda, I invite you to stay engaged with us. Right now, you're participating in some of our National Arts and Education Week programming. Another part of our efforts for this week included securing a governor's proclamation recognizing the importance of arts education and sending letters along with those teacher survey results to superintendents, Board of Education members, and state legislators to invite them to support arts education this week and all year long. If you're not already following us on social media, please do so to see the rest of our Arts and Ed Week content, and stay tuned for similar celebration in March for Arts in Our Schools Month. The next opportunity to hear from us and do a deeper dive into some policy and advocacy strategies are at the Maryland Art, Dance, Music, and Theater Education Association conferences on October 17th and 18th. And we'll be back together on Zoom in November with a pre-session legislative update. So same time, same place, November 19th, 4 p.m. on Zoom. We'll do a little bit more deep dive into what's going to happen at the General Assembly legislative session that begins in January. Thank you very much for being here, for listening to this update, and being a part of our strong arts education ecosystem here in Maryland. We'll now shift to the Q&A portion of our time together. And if you are not staying for the Q&A portion, before anyone hops off, I want to first say thank you again for spending a bit of your precious time with us. We at AEMS believe so deeply and strongly in the power of the arts and its essential nature to every child's public education. I am who I am because of my public school arts education, and I thank every single one of you who cares enough to show up today and likely does a whole lot more every single day to show up for kids and provide an excellent and equitable education that's shaping our next generation. If this was a meaningful experience for you, please consider making a charitable donation to AEMS to help us continue our work. You can also purchase apparel through our Power of the Arts shop with a 15% off discount through the end of September, which is applied automatically at checkout. We would also love your feedback on this experience, in particular through our program survey.